Translation, we are going to use our psychological weapons strategically, not randomly. This is chess.
This video's I'm like on the verge of laughter this whole time, dude.
Checkers. But Jackson had identified.
All right, welcome back to another After Dark, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good night so far. Hope you guys had a good day. I wanted to check out this video, and honestly, this was recommended that I watch a couple of times from the community so far. This is a video from Old School Basketball, and it's titled When Rebounds Almost Beat Points for Finals MVP. And if you guys don't know, this is about the 1996, I got to assume at least, this is about the 1996 NBA Finals, where it was the Bulls versus the Seattle Supersonics, and Jordan actually had his lowest scoring output NBA Finals ever, which kind of makes sense considering everything that was going on with him. You know, his first full season back, and you know, the first finals without his dad and all that. But all that aside, the other story of the NBA Finals was Dennis Rodman and his absolute mind games he was playing on the entire Seattle Supersonics, and the crazy impact it had. It was a wild roller coaster, and I'm excited we're gonna actually watch this so I can re-experience this. But the antics that Rodman was on, he was at peak psychological warfare at this point. So this is going to be a lot of fun to go back and watch. I've heard a couple arguments for Rodman being MVP this finals. I don't really buy that, but I will 100% say he was the unsung hero of this series. You know, it wasn't just Michael Jordan. Rodman was out there doing the psychological warfare, and it was absolutely hilarious. So anyways, without further ado, I'm going to link the original video down below in the description like I always do. So if you want to check out the video, go right ahead. It's there. You also see a list of channel members. Shout out to each and every one of you. I appreciate you all. You know this. And I think that's it, you guys. Like the vid, please. I'd appreciate it. And let's enjoy the story. Here we go.
What if everything you know about the 1996 NBA Finals is wrong? Michael Jordan, Finals MVP. Case closed, right?
I forgot about this, dude. This guy's hilarious. We're in for a fun video, you guys.
Except here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. The opposing coach literally said Dennis Rodman was the MVP of the game too. The opposing superstar admitted Rodman, not Jordan, beat them. And a Chicago Tribune columnist argued Rodman had a better Finals MVP case than Jordan. What I'm about to show you will completely change how you think about one of the most famous championship series in NBA history.
I think there's no question he was the MVP for their game tonight. His offensive rebounding hurt us.
Okay, we need to talk, because I've been going through the 1996 Finals coverage, and I mean really going through it, like Charlie Day with the conspiracy board and It Is Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And I've discovered something absolutely wild. This whole time, we've been telling the wrong story about the 1996 Finals. And before you start typing angry comments about how I'm disrespecting his airness, just hear me out.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I know. This is a story that definitely needs to be told. Let's do it.
This isn't some contrarian hot take designed to generate clicks. This is what actually happened when you dig past surface-level narratives and look at what the players, coaches, and media were actually saying at the time. This is the story of how Dennis Rodman psychologically destroyed the Seattle Supersonics using methods that had nothing to do with traditional basketball, and why the wrong guy got the trophy. Here's the thing about the 1996 Finals that nobody talks about anymore. They weren't just basketball games. They were a full-blown cultural event that would make the Kardashians jealous. Over 200 credentialed media members from 40 countries descended on Chicago. To put that in perspective, the 93 Finals had just 75 international commentators. This was basketball as global theater, and guess who was the main character? Bob Dole. Yeah, Bob Dole showed
what?
up to game 2 and declared
What? Republican president candidate in waiting Bob Dole signs the Chicago Bulls jersey. Blah, 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 blah. So, what?
himself a Michael Jordan fan, which is hilarious because while Dole was praising Jordan, the game was actually being won by a guy who looked like he just walked out of a rave in Ibiza. The media had built this up some kind of cultural clash. Seattle's latte-sipping sophistication versus Chicago's blue-collar shot and a beer mentality. Coffee versus beer. Grunge versus house music. Pacific Northwest's chill vibe against the Midwest work ethic. But what they completely missed was that Dennis Rodman was operating on an entirely different level.
I mean, he was all season, to be fair. The guy was an absolute monster in 96. He was focused.
While everyone else was playing basketball, Rodman was conducting a psychological experiment that would make Stanley Milgram jealous.
Yep.
Cindy Crawford interviewed Rodman for MTV's House of Style. She said he was the catalyst for all the action. A supermodel was calling a basketball player the most interesting person in the building. That should tell you everything about who was really driving this narrative. The Sonics never stood a chance because they were playing the wrong game entirely.
But I'm being productive. At 35 years old, I play like I'm 20 years old.
You did,
June 5th,
yeah.
1996,
You
United
really
Center,
did.
Game 1 of the NBA Finals, and the psychological war began before the opening tip. Now, here's where this gets interesting on multiple levels. Because Phil Jackson wasn't just throwing Rodman onto court and hoping for chaos. This was calculated psychological warfare with a very specific strategic purpose. Jackson said before the series, "We'd like Dennis to play camp a lot, but it can't be steady diet for Dennis." Translation, we are going to use our psychological weapons strategically, not randomly. This is chess, not
This video's I'm like on the verge of laughter this whole time, dude.
checkers. But Jackson had identified something crucial about Seattle's psychology that goes way deeper than X and O's. George Karl had recently overcome drinking problems and admitted his temper was a weakness, and it was my ego too. This wasn't just a basketball scouting, this was psychological profiling. And then there's Frank Rikowski.
Yeah, here it is.
Newspapers had identified him as Seattle's enforcer, their designated tough guy whose job was to neutralize Rodman.
Dude.
Multiple
This poor guy. Let's just keep going.
review articles mention him as a key factor.
Uh-huh.
Here's a guy who was supposed to be Seattle's answer to everything, and Rodman clearly did his homework. The officials were so concerned about what might happen that they called 56 fouls and 5 technical fouls in Game 1 alone. 56 fouls. They knew they were dealing with something unprecedented. It was like if the WWE hired Navy SEALs as referees because they were worried the match might get out of hand.
And that they have Dennis Rodman, who cheats all over the court all the time, be rewarded for acting and flopping, and then let him laugh at us, laugh at the league, laugh at the referee, taunt our bench, and not be punished.
He wasn't flopping though. That's the beautiful thing, the most amazing thing about Rodman. He would basically like bait someone to hit him, and that's the way he thrived. He would literally like drive you nuts until you just shove him, hit him, do something crazy. That's not a flop. That's a different term. You know, flop is when you pretend to get hit. No, Dennis Rodman got hit, and he got hit hard, and he did it on purpose, so he punished the other team.
Rodman showed up about 2 hours before the game with fresh hair that looked like he'd been dipped in a bag of Skittles, while other players were going through their pre-game routines. Rodman was making a fashion statement that would rattle opponents before they even touched the ball. Then came the systematic destruction of Frank Rikowski, and I'm using the word systematic very deliberately here, because this was a random chaos. This was surgical. 2 technical fouls, ejection, Seattle's enforcer eliminated in the first game through pure psychological manipulation. But here's where it gets really diabolical. Jack Haley, Rodman's teammate and supposed friend of Brikowski, twisted the knife. He called me for Bulls ticket 2 days ago. Shows you what kind of friends we are. I didn't give him any. Haley is using their personal friendship to humiliate Brikowski on national television. Brikowski's response? You're out there to play basketball, not act like you're getting fouled. But that is exactly the point. Rodman had already changed the rules of engagement. The psychological impact was immediate. Seattle's committed 18 turnovers to Chicago's 8.
Now you see how the coach, the players, everyone is commenting about this, commenting and complaining about Rodman. That's the second they lost. The second that they acknowledged it, they complained about it. That's how the Dennis Rodman knew this is working 100%. So he just fed right into his hands, and or they just fed right into his hands. Like, that was the biggest mistake. They were playing victim in this scenario. And they shouldn't have. Instead, they should have had an attitude, kind of like the Bulls had to do with the bad boy Pistons in order to eventually finally beat them, is to not let them get you emotional. Don't get riled up. Stay focused. Ignore Rodman the best you can. Don't hit him. Don't react. Just play basketball and push through. Break through push through the distractions. That should have been the message from Coach Carl. But instead, he led the charge in the playing the victim because of Dennis Rodman was on a whole nother level psychologically. This might be the most interesting NBA Finals ever when it comes to this.
5 turnovers by Shaun Kemp alone in the first half.
Nice block, Luke.
A team that had been mentally composed all season was suddenly making unforced errors like they were playing their first pickup game.
Well, that's how you know their head's not in the game anymore. That's the whole point. The game is psychological. Whether we want to think it is or not, it's a little bit less these days because the refs are taught to basically not let the players show much emotion. But back then, yeah, man, there was plenty of emotion on the court.
And this was just the beginning of Seattle's psychological collapse. Game 2, June 7th. This is where Dennis Rodman entered basketball immortality and broke Seattle's will to live simultaneously. 11 offensive rebounds.
Nice.
11.
Yep.
Tying the NBA Finals record set by Alvin Hayes in 1979. But this wasn't just some historical footnote. Every time Seattle thought they had stopped a Bulls possession, here comes this rainbow-haired maniac appearing like Beetlejuice to give Chicago another chance to score. In a finals where 3 games were decided by single digits, those extra possessions were literally the difference between championship and catastrophic failure. Vincent Askew, Seattle's guard, said, "Rodman killed us. Not Jordan, not Pippen. Rodman killed them."
Yeah.
But wait, it gets better with 1.1 seconds left.
But I mean, let's be fair. For the most part, we're talking he killed them psychologically. But the rebounds were hella good too, man. But at the end of the day, we still got to score points to win, So that's where the Finals MVP thing comes into play. It's going to go to the highest score, as it usually does.
And the Bulls clinging to a 92-88 lead. Who made the clutch free throw that sealed the victory? Dennis Rodman. While Jordan struggled from the line going 7 of 11, Rodman delivered in the moment that matters the most. And here's where this gets absolutely insane. George Karl, the opposing coach, said after the game, there is no question he was the MVP of the game. His offensive rebound effort, his offensive rebounds hurt us. A lot of possessions, the momentum of the game, the style of the game, and even the scoreboard might have changed. Read that again. Opposing coach is literally making the Finals MVP case for Dennis Rodman. This would be like Bill Belichick after losing the Colts saying, yeah, Peyton was good, but their punter really beat us. Detlef Schrempf put it even more bluntly, Rodman's offensive rebounds at the end killed us. He got 3 offensive rebounds that broke our backs. They are not talking about Jordan breaking their backs, they are talking about rebounds. Rebounds, breaking their psychological will to compete. By game 2, it was clear that Seattle wasn't just losing basketball games. June 9th, Seattle Key Arena, the Sonics' home court, their last stand. This should have been where Seattle fought back, where the home crowd lifted them, where they showed some pride. Instead, what happened was the most thorough psychological dismantling in finals history. Seattle attempted just 60 field goals. 60, the lowest in NBA Finals history. The previous record was 66. This was a team so mentally broken they couldn't even get decent shots. But Rodman wasn't satisfied with just breaking players.
The jester. That's who he was here. The true jester. I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe I'll make a thumbnail out of it or something. He was the absolute clown, and it was the best thing I've ever seen, man.
He was going after the coaching staff now. In the middle of a finals game, he walked over near the Seattle bench and started trash-talking George Karl directly. I said, George, I know you're a great coach, but you got to teach your boys again how to play defense again. In the middle of an NBA Finals game, Dennis Rodman was giving coaching advice to the opposing coach. This is like if Tom Brady walked over to the other sideline during the Super Bowl and started critiquing the defensive coordinator's play calling. Then came up the coup de grace. Frank Brickowski ejected for the second time in 3 games. Same tactics, same result. This poor guy was like a cartoon character running into the same brick wall over and over again. Brickowski completely helpless.
Look at this crap.
I am baffled by it. I don't know what you can do if he's going to be allowed to flop and get away with it.
See, it's not a flop though. Look at this. This is not a flop anymore. This is full contact. He got you. He got you psychologically.
That is a broken man.
You did it. You did it. You should have done it.
Admitting he has no answer for what Rodman is doing to him. It is like watching someone try to explain how to get scammed by a 3-card Monte dealer. The defining image of the series then is Rodman shrugging at Frank Brickowski like he was dealing with a toddler having a tantrum. Gary Payton, who was supposed to be Seattle's fury leader, they're just championship team. With Michael Jordan, it just make them better. They're teaching us a lesson. A team that never lost 3 straight games all season was now talking like they were grateful just to be here. After 3 games, it was clear that Dennis Rodman hadn't just outplayed Seattle, he had psychologically destroyed them.
But they don't understand though. You can't mess with the master. You can't mess with the master.
But here's where this gets really interesting, and where our thesis gets its strongest proof. Because what happened in games 4 and 5 shows exactly how crucial Rodman's psychological dominance was. Game 4, for the first time in 5 days, Seattle finally broke free from Rodman's psychological grip. George Karl said it perfectly. The energy of the game this time was initiated by us, not Chicago. When Seattle wasn't being mentally rattled, they shot 58 from the field while Chicago managed only 40%. Shaun Kemp had his best game with 25 points. Gary Payton finally looked like an all-star he was supposed to be. Game 5, the Tribune's coverage was devastating for our argument in the best way possible. This time Dennis Rodman wasn't talking. When Rodman's psychological warfare was neutralized, the Bulls immediately fell apart. 3 for 26 from the 3-point range, missing 20 straight 3-pointers at one stretch.
What?
Jordan scored only 2 points in the 4th quarter. This isn't coincidence. When Seattle wasn't mentally broken by Rodman's antics, they could focus on proper defensive rotations and contest shots effectively. The pattern was crystal clear. Bulls win games 1 to 3. Rodman neutralized. Bulls lose games 4 and 5. Game 6 was where Dennis Rodman reasserted his psychological dominance and delivered the championship. During a crucial 3rd quarter stretch, Rodman scored 5 points, grabbed an offensive rebound, and drew a charge. The Tribune noted, during the 3rd quarter you would have sworn there were 3 or 4 Rodmans playing for the Bulls. 19 rebounds, 11 offensive rebounds.
Damn.
Bulls out-rebounded Seattle
Look at this
53 to
monster.
25. And then came George Karl's final.
Look at himself. This is what's so funny. He's pissing. Look, he's doing it. Look at what he's facing. He's facing their bench. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing at every moment. Look at this play.
53 to 25.
Look at his layup.
And then came George
Yeah.
Karl's final.
Yeah, suck
Devastating
that.
admission. A quote that proves our entire thesis. Dennis Rodman won 2 games. We could control Dennis Rodman 4 games, but games 2 and tonight, 19 rebounds, 11 offensive
Yep.
rebounds.
And
Think
this
about
is
what-
why I miss specialists in the NBA, because you can't tell me a guy like Rodman is not valuable to winning. You know what I mean? Like, y'all, the rest of you can focus on scoring. This guy's going to clean up all the trash and distract everybody so they don't even know they're getting destroyed or how they're getting destroyed.
Carl said, he is literally breaking down the series for us. The opposing coach...
See, George Karl, I respect him less for making all these comments throughout the series. You know, he should have just been focused on what can we do to win. But instead, he's just like he's just focused on what the Bulls are doing, and especially what Rodman was doing, because that was the focal point.
just gave us the perfect statistical breakdown of why Dennis Rodman was the real Finals MVP. But the smoking gun comes from the opposing superstar, SlkEM's
See,
confession
that's not a flop, you guys. That's not a flop. That's real contact.
nobody talks about. Michael Jordan didn't beat us. Dennis Rodman is the one who beat us. When the opposing superstar admits you were the reason they lost, maybe we should take that seriously. Here's what makes this argument bulletproof. I'm not making this up decades later with the benefit of hindsight and revisionist history. The people who were there, watching every possession, taking notes, filing stories on deadline, they were saying this stuff at the time. Bob Verdi, writing for the Chicago Tribune during the series. Had he not played perfectly, Rodman had an equal chance with Jordan to be the most valuable player of the finals, maybe better. A mainstream Chicago columnist was making the finals MVP case for Rodman in real time. This wasn't some Seattle homer trying to cope with losing. This was a Chicago reporter covering for the Bulls for the hometown paper. The circus atmosphere that Rodman thrived in was unprecedented. This was like if Coachella decided to host a basketball tournament. Dennis Rodman was partying with Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam before games, staying out all night while maintaining peak performance. While Seattle was trying to focus on basketball fundamentals and team meetings, Rodman was living like a rock star and still dominating the most important games of the season. The United Center sold 2,833 standing room only tickets for each home game. People were paying money to stand for 3 hours just to witness this cultural phenomenon. Every extra person in the building made the circus atmosphere more intense, and every increase in intensity favored Rodman's skill set. Phil Jackson said, "We sensed an opportunity to gasp this series in Game 3 on the road. You have to have a certain focus. You have to have a certain killer instinct." But it wasn't Jordan providing that killer instinct on the road. It was Rodman's psychological warfare that was silencing the hostile crowds and breaking opposing teams' will to compete.
I love how I said in the intro, I called it psychological warfare, and so is old school b-ball. Like, that's the only way to describe what happened. It's true psychological warfare.
This was overwhelming then, and it is overwhelming now. So why did Jordan win the Finals MVP if Rodman was the real difference maker? 11 votes total. Jordan 6, Kemp 3, Rodman 2.
Kemp 3? Whoa.
Here's the thing that should bother anyone who cares about basketball analysis. Rodman had a legitimate case for all 11 votes based on actual impact on winning. The answer is simple: narrative inertia and voter fatigue. Jordan was the obvious choice, the safe choice, the choice that makes sense according to traditional basketball wisdom. Voters see 27.3 points per game, and think Finals MVP, because that is how we have always evaluated basketball greatness. But Rodman's impact was completely unconventional, record-breaking rebounding, clutch moments, systematic elimination of opposing players through ejections, stuff that...
Jesus. What's sad is nowadays he would get so many technicals just for the outbursts, just for the celebrations. He'd be getting technicals, and I'm not in favor of that. I miss this kind of stuff. You know, you dunk on someone's head, you should be able to stare at him and yell. You know, be like, yeah, and celebrate.
Show up in traditional box scores, but absolutely shows up in the wins and losses. It is like if Jaws had won the best picture over Rocky, because everyone focused on the shark without noticing that the real story was about this small-town police chief overcoming his fear of water. Sometimes the most important character isn't the most obvious one. Bob Verdi wasn't some Seattle homer. When the hometown paper is making your opponent's argument, maybe you should listen. 28 years later, we are still talking about the 1996 Bulls as the greatest team ever. The 72-win season, the dominance, the cultural impact, but we've been crediting the wrong player for what made them truly unstoppable. Michael Jordan was spectacular. Scottie Pippen was crucial. Phil Jackson was brilliant. But Dennis Rodman was the X factor that turned that potentially competitive finals into a psychological rout. And if we're being honest about what actually happened during those 6 games in June 1996, if we are willing to let evidence speak for itself rather than relying on outdated narratives and traditional thinking, the wrong guy got the Finals MVP trophy. If this video changed how you think about the 1996 Finals, hit the subscribe button for more deep dives into basketball.
All right, fantastic video. To me, no, it doesn't change a thing. I mean, I watched that series live, and I've always given Dennis the proper respect for what he pulled off during that finals. And I actually recently, I think it was after around 2020, after I finished watching The Last Dance, I went back on YouTube and I watched I think the entire series, the entire finals. And yeah, man, Dennis stands out. Like you can't, the focus, even on the commentators, the media, like all of the focus was on Rodman. But you guys, that was the job. That was what he was supposed to do. So everyone is just focusing on the jester. No one's focusing on the game and what's really happening. And the fact that, you know, the Seattle Supersonics were losing and they eventually lost, you know, but all of the focus was on Rodman as he's putting on a show for everyone and distracting everyone. And that's why all I have to say is Rodman couldn't win without Jordan that time. Jordan definitely needed Rodman on this one. Like they were very valuable. Jordan, obvious. I mean, I get the point of the video, and I'm glad he did this video because there needs to be awareness raised of what Rodman pulled off in '96. That was the biggest psychological like hijack I've ever seen. Like one man versus an entire team, an entire organization, and he got all of them distracted. But yeah, I mean, the Finals MVP still goes to Jordan. What annoys me a little bit though is the fact that Shawn Kemp got more Finals MVP votes than Dennis Rodman. Now that I'm not in favor of, because in my opinion, if there was a second place Finals MVP, that was definitely Dennis Rodman. It wasn't Pippen. It wasn't anybody else. You know, it would have been Dennis Rodman. But at the end of the day, you got to score buckets to win. So that's why this was such a good pairing to have Rodman here, especially in '96 because Rodman was very focused in '96. '97 he got really distracted. '98 it got worse. But this season he was like hyper focused, and him going out there playing psychological warfare with everybody and then pulling down all those rebounds while Jordan takes care of about 35% of the scoring load at that point. Like they were a perfect tandem, and those were some damn good times. Anyways, you guys, thanks for watching this vid with me. Did you guys know about this? Like, did you watch this series? Did this change your mind about anything? Because for me, I already knew all this stuff going in, so I was in for the laugh. That was a really fun time. Actually, my face kind of hurt. It's time for me to get out of here. Let me know what your opinions are on the 96 finals. And what do you think about like how the players and George Carlin handled it? Because I remember that clearly too. They weren't talking about the game, you know? They were just talking about Rodman, and they were complaining about Rodman. And that's how I knew, like, you know, he's got him. He's got him. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your night, everybody. Have a wonderful, safe night. Have some fun. Be safe. It's a crazy world. Stay cool. All that good stuff. And like the vid if you enjoyed it. Dislike it twice if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. And most of all, to be water, my friend. Don't let clowns distract you.